Okay. All right, in that case, we'll call the meeting to order, June 21st. It's a Measure J Commission meeting. Ariana, can you do roll call, please?
Commissioner Bixson? Here. Commissioner Craig?
Here.
Commissioner Gazan?
I am here.
Commissioner Gray? Vice Chair Hammond?
Here.
Chair Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Marshall?
Here.
Commissioner Vogel? Commissioner Williams?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All righty. So the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Gray, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure, I'm standing. Let me put my glasses on, sorry. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, hello, Mr. Keel. Okay. Acceptance of the agenda. The Measure J Commission will discuss the order of the agenda and may amend any of the items or remove items. Is there any discussion around the agenda?
I did have one item.
Okay. Commissioner Hammond?
Is the Communications Committee done with their reporting, or are we going to get a report from Communications?
It wasn't on the agenda for this meeting.
No, but I thought it was gonna be.
Oh. Well, that would
So
be my fault.
the
I missed
answer
it.
is no, I guess. Okay,
Yeah, I didn't ask anybody to prepare. So.
X that out.
Okay. Is that it? Oh, yeah, Commissioner Marshall.
I don't think we can add things to the agenda, correct?
Let me just say this, we have a hard 5:30 stop today.
Okay.
So but if you feel that you'd like to, go ahead.
I'm going to bring up a member comments, commission member comments, and ask for it to be on the next one.
If you want to have it on the agenda, please do. We don't want to.
It's regarding the surprise that we're going to be giving $200,000 to the airport commission. I want to discuss that.
Do you mean for the sales tax item?
Yeah.
Well, that's part of my financial report.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, well, good.
Yes,
Perfect.
yes.
All right. So, do I hear a motion for the acceptance of the agenda?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Approval of the minutes, April 23rd. Again, any discussion over the minutes?
I do.
Commissioner Hammond?
I do.
Okay.
On page 3 of the minutes, it is under Commissioner Member comment, items, comments, and requests. I mentioned last month that I had met with Sid Craig, Ellen Goodman, and Les Young to discuss possible projects. If we could somehow clarify that these projects were Parks and Rec projects that related to the community projects from 2017, I think that would be a little more more clear for, yes, that's a good word, succinct for the minutes, and help other readers of the minutes understand what that is, because I do want everyone to remember that the Parks and Rec Commission did bring community project to
Measure J.
Measure J.
Do you mean that you had a meeting or you're scheduling a meeting?
No, I did have a meeting.
Because this says she's scheduled as though you were doing it in the future.
Okay, it may have been that, and I'd have to go back and look at my date, but I did meet with them.
I think at that time she had not met yet, but
Okay.
she has met since that time.
Yes,
I
Yes.
just wanted to make sure that it was present or past. I
yes,
wasn't clear.
it happened, and
Okay.
it's just the Parks projects.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved?
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay.
Just a
right, so-
reminder for everyone to use their mics. Make sure the little green light is on,
Okay,
so it gets picked up for the minutes
okay, sure.
For the
Everybody
next-
heard that?
time.
Thank you. Okay, public comment. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Measure J Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter and jurisdiction of the commission. Although the Measure J Commission values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot act or take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. 3 minutes are assigned each speaker. Ariana, do we have a public speaker? No? Okay, all right. Oh, there you go. Excellent. Well, you're welcome anyway, even though you're not going to speak. You're certainly welcome. Okay, welcome and comments from Measure J. Chair, I guess that's me for at least the evening. Most of you already know the City Council has offered to extend the commissioners that were terming out to stay until 12/31/2018. Vice Chair Hammond has agreed to stay on. Commissioner Marshall has agreed to stay on. Commissioner Vogel has said no. And I don't know, Commissioner Williams, what you decided. I'll stay. Excellent. Thank you, sir. All right. So that's terrific. So I'll thank you very much for all of you staying. The knowledge you bring to Fold is incredibly important to us, and so we're delighted you're staying.
And it's only till December, right?
December 31st. And I'm going to purposely have, oh, no, I'm not chair, shoot. I was purposely going to have a meeting in December, but I don't have that control anymore. All right, so that's the end of that. You may.
I called and I asked the question, and they said that there were 4 candidates who had applied for Measure J commissions.
Okay, that's
That
good.
they'd be interviewed in the early fall by the council.
Oh, they won't be interviewed until the fall?
That's what I was told. I was told that by Anthony's office.
They
that
did
they'd
it in
be
July
interviewed.
last year.
They don't have a date set. They were working on that date for the fall, but they don't have it yet.
Okay.
So once they do the interviews, they may not start till early year.
Do we know if there's a possibility if they get selected that they may be asked to start earlier than January?
As far as I know, I don't
Okay,
believe
so
so.
that's something we'll
I
have
will
to.
make
That was the
clarify.
question I was wondering.
Right.
I will follow up on that.
How we handled that last year is the people that were asked to stay they could, if someone came in, if they chose to, could leave. And then we could, like I said, we can figure that out in the fall. If we got 4 replacements, that would be pretty amazing. So we'll worry about that then.
Okay.
But thanks for bringing that up, because usually, like I said, they usually have it in July, so, but they're really hoping probably that,
But it sounds like we have one opening for sure already.
we do. We
So-
definitely have one.
Maybe interviews could be made and at least one of those people be appointed so they could be here September through December.
I'll follow up with the city clerks on that date, and once I have it, I can share it.
Yeah, they may not have known if anyone was going to not stay, but now that we know that
Yeah.
at least one person is not going to
Yeah.
stay, that leaves us with one opening.
Okay.
So I guess I would encourage them to at least interview so that a person could come on, because that really helps in the rotation, because then their term is a bit staggered.
My guess will be, it depends on how many of the commissioners and board members that are terming out stay on. If the mass majority of them stay on, I bet they'll wait until the fall. If the mass majority of them do not, they're gonna have to interview anyway. So I would think that they probably would then interview in July, but I think that'll probably drive it. Who knows? They'll let us know, or Ariana will let us know. The only other thing I had, Jeff, is do we have an update on the Measure J recommendations that were made at the joint meeting?
Thank you. I was going to mention that in my report, but I'll just answer your question now. So, as you know, the council approved the overall city budget on June 6th at their first opportunity at the public hearing. They did discuss the Measure J projects. However, they deferred making any final decision regarding which ones to fund. They were looking towards guidance from Assistant City Attorney Marcus Fuller, who was off adopting a baby over in Philadelphia. So he was not at that meeting, and They thought they needed further staff input, and there was no one else available at that meeting to help them, guide them through that conversation. So they kind of left it open that we'll deal with this at a future meeting. They have a couple of other items. The most notable one is deciding on funding for special grants and sponsorships. That's a huge item that is approved in the budget as a placeholder, but they can decide how to allocate those funds later. So they viewed both of those items the same way. They look at the money being available, about 3.4 million, and they'll work through that at a future meeting, but it hasn't been specified which meeting that will occur at.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Actually, that's all I have, so
Okay, we'll roll right into mine. So I would, this is actually an ideal segue because I'm going to have you look real quick over the second page. I thought I'd throw this in.
yeah,
Whenever we hit a milestone, I like to bring that out. So we've hit the $75 million mark,
That's
which
excellent.
is quite remarkable. And I'll also mention that the revenues that are in right now reflect 3 quarters, 3 full quarters. And I'm not prepared to make a revised estimate other than to say, I think we'll be coming in higher than the 14.2 million.
excellent.
It's always a bit of a challenge projecting these revenues. And I get information from our community services consultants, but their information isn't ideal either. So the final revenue won't be received until the end of September.
Right.
But I think that there's good news coming. So with that, I think that will help having the little bit of delay for council deciding on how to spend this $3.4 million if it actually grows,
Yes, that'd be great.
right?
Absolutely, thank you.
So with that, I'll just mention that there really isn't anything else to report as far as changes. The item that we always look at right in the middle of the page, that ONDA's agreement on the uptown parking, will that happen next year or will that not happen? I asked Assistant City Manager Marcus Fuller, and he thought that actually is likely to happen in that 18-19 year if he were to guess.
Wow.
But there's a lot of things that have to happen between now and then. That, as you recall, the triggering mechanism is when they get a certificate of occupancy. That triggers the legal responsibility for the city to provide $2 million to help pay for public parking that we benefit from.
Right.
So,
Can I just ask a question? You may or may not know the answer. We may have discussed this. I know it's 100 spaces, right?
you know, you're already past my knowledge level.
I just wondered if it's going to be free like the downtown parking. Does anyone know?
As far as I know, it's free, but I can't guarantee that.
Should be, you're gonna give them $2 million.
Yeah, I'm 99% sure it's free. With that, I don't think there's anything to note as far as changes. So let me go back to Commissioner Williams' inquiry about the airport aviation fuel sales item. So one significant item that happened as kind of a surprise is I did get a letter from the FAA, shockingly. I'd gotten a letter back several months ago responding to my first letter from over a year ago. Actually, it was like 2 years ago, laying out the plan, where we had a preliminary plan for how to deal with this FAA edict. And the person responded to my first letter without even acknowledging a second letter that was sent almost a year later, which had a more refined plan. And so I was getting ready to respond to that plan when I got a new letter from a different FAA administrator in the same chair. And he said, "We like your plan, we accept it," which is not surprising since the airport personnel have reported that we're about the only city around that's come up with a plan and is actually taking this to heart, their admonition that you need to do this by December 2017, and we're implemented. So they're probably just happy to see one city that said, okay, we're going to do this. Because it really is a challenge to carve out and come up with information on how much aviation fuel is sold, and then come up with add-ons, not just sales taxes, add-on sales taxes associated with that. It's not easy. So our benefit is that all of our commercial aviation fuel is trucked in. So it's actually exempt from all of this. We have two, what they call fixed-based operators, FBOs, who sell fuel to general aviation users. These guys that have their private jets over at Signature and what's the other one? I forget. Anyway, there's two of them over at, thanks. And so, and they also have a variety of other things that they provide. They do maintenance, they provide food and all kinds of things. So what we had to do is get airport staff, Mark Juke in particular, he's basically the finance director for the airport. He went to each of them and said, I need to get from you guys a monthly report on just your aviation fuel sales activity. And they are providing that to him. And then we can calculate to the penny what is associated with Measure J and now Measure D sales taxes. And so we've been tracking that. We have information for the first 10 months. And so as we are looking towards the numbers, I can project that our number that we estimated at the beginning of the budget of 150,000 is actually, looks to be right near the money. If anything, it's probably just slightly high. The $200,000 number is for 1819 is more in question because we didn't have any information on what the really strong months of April, May, and June would do. So that could be light. I'm just not sure. That was my best calculated guess at the time. So what happens this money? We don't send it to the airport, okay? It stays in the Measure J fund, despite what the director wants. He says, you're gonna just be sending us this money when you just spend it. I said, no, no, no. This is not the way it works. There's two commissions involved here. And the Measure J Commission's responsibility is for validating the proper assignment related to the airport and this FAA edict that came down. So we do the calculations and we'll report it to you on a regular basis, and it will be part of the dual audits that get handled at the end of the fiscal year. So we'll have both sets of auditors look at this and verify the figures and be able to report, yes, this was calculated correctly or not. So we have a special account in the Measure J fund where this is segregated as undesignated projects related to FAA fuel sales for airport purposes, and that's to be determined. Now, the Airport Commission will have their part in recommending projects, just as you do. and then eventually it goes to city council for approval. It's a lot of steps for a very small amount of money. I let my thoughts be known on this. We have a huge project that we've talked to you about before, and that is the fuel lines which go from the cogen plant to the airport. The early estimate was that they would cost $7 million to replace, and I think that number is rising. The assistant city manager had opined that it would be fair to split that cost half and half between the airport and the city, the rest of the city. So that early estimate would have been $3.5 million. So my thought was, as an idea, is do the project, fund it over a long period of time, and use this flow of funds that's going to be about $200,000 a year to pay for that. And essentially, if you can get the project done 5 years from now, you just essentially borrow on future flow of revenue for this. That's one way to deal with it. Now, that's just finance director's idea, and no one really cares. So, but, you know, again, this is,
You can spread out the costs.
well,
They're 100% behind you.
yeah, and this thing is, again, it's not going to get much bigger than this. And unless if the airlines start having fuel brought to the airport for purchase, but that's not going to happen. That's not, it just logistically doesn't make any sense. So that's I probably, instead of killing a fly with a fly swatter, I think I hit it with a sledgehammer. To answer your questions?
Actually, it was Commissioner Marshall.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
That's what I was gonna ask.
I wouldn't have said all that if I knew it was Commissioner Marshall. Okay, all right, never
He knew
mind.
that with,
Take all that
he
back.
knew with John, he was going to
Man,
anticipate
I
every
wasted
possible
all those
question.
words.
There you
No. Does that help answer your questions and concern?
It actually makes sense. I guess kind of you're talking about that, and I think that with the airport commission, I believe the other cities or other valleys, why aren't they contributing to that $7 million?
None of the cities have any financial obligation directly to the airport. They have seats on the commission. Each city has a seat, and then Palm Springs has like 6 seats, something like that. But as far as a direct financial obligation or contribution, there is none. Indirect, my brother, who was, used to be the deputy director of the airport, told me, this airport would not exist if it was for just Palm Springs. It takes all 9 cities and the activity associated with them to really make it the viable entity that it is. But, yeah, it really, they'll never be looked at to contribute money for shortfalls in funding, if there's any need for construction projects that are not FAA funded. There's no obligation on their part to participate.
Okay.
So,
I think I'd make one last comment, and it's like, just that I would agree. My concern is we're an oversight commission. It's nice to know that they're part of the audit, but it does seem like we should have a say in how that's being spent since it is Measure J funds. So,
you will.
and
You will.
Yeah.
You do and you will.
Oh, thank you very much. Now, since we don't have Thomas or Marcus, I take it we're not going to have any kind of, there's really not any projects update anyway.
Right. I had heard that both the city manager and Marcus were not available. I thought that Thomas was coming. Maybe he still might show up, but the Marcus Fuller's thought was, I don't think there's really much to report.
I think yes, Commissioner Gray.
Yes, I just wanted to add one more quick question about this airport reserve.
Yes.
So this started in 2007, is that correct?
Well-
And nothing was before that?
What not 2000. So what happened was in 2015, in December, FAA came out with this ruling saying that cities throughout the nation had to come up with a plan for implementing this ruling that said if you have fuel sales related to add-on sales taxes, that they need, that money generated from that needed to go towards airport uses. That was the ruling. So they said, you've got 2 years to figure this out. And, we sent a letter, I sent a letter in compliance with that saying, we don't have the information, and we're going to have to rely upon the State Board of Equalization to come up with a process for providing this information, because it doesn't exist. And that's true. We ended up coming up with this method on our own. I have no idea how an LAX is going to do this, because we did it by kind of a very direct method, staff to a couple of vendors. There's no way that I'm aware of for the data to be captured on a large basis. So these large airports have a huge impact, and that's why I don't think any of them have responded in a very affirmative way, like this is what we're doing.
I guess that really wasn't my question. My question was, when did it go into effect?
Oh. December 8th, 2017 was when they said you must have it go into effect. So we began, the reason why this is 150,000, and I apologize, I didn't follow through to hear your question. So we began the identification for December 1, 2017. So the 150,000 represents 7 months of activity in this fiscal year, and the 200,000 represents a full year.
So will we, has 2017, 2018 closed?
No, I mentioned we have 2 more months we're waiting on.
Okay, so when that closes, we will have an exact figure of how much money is there.
That's correct.
And that's the beginning figure.
And as we do with these other things, if it's high or low, we'll adjust it versus
Right,
the other balance.
right. I was just trying to figure out at what point this started and, because these are round figures, and I assume that they won't be round figures if you.
They won't be.
Figure out okay,
They'll-
that was my question.
They'll be to a specific
So-
dollar amount.
So, as of September, we'll have some sort of, or October, we'll have some sort of amount of money
Yeah.
that we've already started as a fund.
Right.
And then
And-
can go from there.
And
Okay,
by the
thank you.
way, as I mentioned with Measure D, we're going to have to be keeping a separate reserve in the general fund that will be half this amount to be used for the same purposes.
But that won't affect Measure J.
No.
Okay.
All right,
But it's
thank
just
you.
something to be aware of if you're saying, we're recommending funding for this project was different than fuel lines or whatever. If you want to say, hey, we've got a $300,000 project, and we know the city has this other funding. If we fund $2 for every 3, then that would pay for it. You could make that argument.
Right, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Just a really quick question,
Okay, quick.
very quickly. So this reserve has to pretty much stay at this level? Is there like a
It'll,
threshold?
no, it'll just build until it's spent.
And do we have to spend every year
No.
or no?
There's no requirement for when you spend it. It just, when you spend it, it needs to go for
But we always have to
airport-related.
pull out a certain amount of money every year, percentage or whatever of the
Now,
sales.
that's correct. That's why
Okay.
it
So this
essentially.
reserve will grow if we don't spend it. And
That's
continue to grow.
That's correct.
And used for mainly capital improvement projects for the
Oh,
airport?
Only capital projects for the
Okay,
airport. right.
so
Not-
paving,
not for
statues,
staff.
fountains, make
Yeah.
new
not for
elevator,
staff.
whatever.
Right.
Okay, Right.
Okay, all right, moving along. Old business, report from the Downtown Park Ad Hoc Committee, Commissioners Craig and Gazan.
The project will be over budget.
Shocking.
That's it. No.
It's gonna be over budget, and I think, I don't know how much you wanna know at this point. I can get into it for a few minutes or not.
No, go ahead. Yeah, please do, that's,
It's a beautiful, beautiful project. Our concern, or my concern at least as an individual, and I did not voice it in the last meeting because we are so far down the rabbit hole on the design of this and everyone is so excited by the design. I'm concerned that it's now entering into an area of being over-designed and going to limit a lot of function as far as special events and maybe programmability and flexibility of the space because it will be so over landscaped that it's pretty much going to be what it is. And it's beautiful, but when I look at the big picture of what's happening in the city, I see a lot of replication that's going to be done on the tribal land site at the new spa and cultural center. And on their property, they will be building a palm oasis and water features and all of these areas to sit and enjoy kind of nature within the downtown. And I think that it's going to be redundant to what we're doing. And again, I say it is a beautiful, very expensive park plan. I caught some inkling in the last meeting. I have not had a chance to bring it up to that committee, but I heard a little underpinning of Modernism Week would love to have that dirt pile again for February to put up their tent, and they won't be able to. Gay Pride is going to do something on that dirt pile currently for Gay Pride because it won't be under construction yet. And I start to think of that and I think, are we giving up revenue sources for the city to have maybe a simpler park, more open space, so that events like Modernism Week, like Gay Pride, like maybe a Christmas Village, maybe Fashion Week moves to Palm Springs. And there's a gamut of other potential festivals that could happen in this city down the road. Are we sort of shooting ourselves in the foot by not having a space large enough to erect a large tent structure to house those kind of events? And let that park also be programmable, that, wow, this can be a central downtown space to house these sort of events and have them right in the heart of downtown next to the museum and something that, you know, the retailers would love. Again, I think that with the plan, it's very far down in the process. We're getting to nitty gritty, down to like pebbles. And, you know, it's where it is. And I think that the leaders on that have kind of pushed aside the idea of Modernism Week, Fashion Week, whatever, coming to Palm Springs or having those headquarters based on that property. So that's a little bit of my concern, especially, I wouldn't raise it if it was in budget.
right.
But we're at close to probably 2 million over budget, and that does not include across the street where the Frey House will be. That does nothing for that. That remains a dirt pile. So,
What was the original budget, 4.5?
5.8 was the original.
was it 5.8 or just 5?
There was, I believe it was 5.8. And, well, I mean, the original was like 9.3, and then they tapered it down and got it down to 5.8 million, which included Quimby money? Yes, which included Quimby money. It wasn't all Measure J funds. And then, of course, there was the 650 we offered up at the joint meeting, but that seems to me like that's just gonna be a drop in the bucket of what they
Well,
are gonna
and
need.
Sid will go to another concern. And right now, I think it's at 6 million, but there's also, they've left out, which to me, it's what they need to do first, is the cost on fixing the parking garage that has that awful bump out. And that's a dual project between the city and Grit Development on who will pay for that. So that might be a shared cost, but it's still going to probably be another $500,000. There were a few things that still needed to be added in, and like anything, I just feel that once we get closer to this project, we're gonna see some overruns. It's just natural. You're dealing with so much material, with stone and landscaping and building. And then there was one other issue. I'll let Sid comment on that quickly.
There was, to see there was a few things also when the water treatment was discussed. They had the individual who was discussing that, and Tom kept saying the cost of maintenance on this and taking care of it. It's not only a water treatment thing, but the water goes down through the rocks, and it's like an art form that keeps doing it. And I had brought up the point that when that at the corner of Vallejo, when the water treatment that goes like this was done, that I was at a council meeting years ago when the company that designed the water treatment for the Bellagio said, "We will repair it for you, but here's the condition. We want a 5-year contract in addition at $30,000 a year to maintain it. That's the only way we'll fix it for you." And I asked Tom, and he said there are definitely issues with this whole thing that could be an ongoing maintenance problem for it. That was a big concern. And then the chief contacted me the next day after the meeting and said to me that you're involved with Measure J, and Melissa Demarest, who was there, who, by the way, was made captain. She's the newest captain. He said the building is 750 square feet. We need more space than that. And I said, you need to have Melissa and whoever is going to raise sit down with the 2 people from the city council and get into this and discuss it. Because he said the type of events that they're talking about, that doesn't give us what we need for the public safety issue that's going on. So he had questions about needing much more space than was given as well in their plans. And there's no question, even the walls of the downtown building there of it, when I made the comment that it looked so beautiful, it was over 400,000?
450,000 for a wall treatment.
Just to do the facial of the wall, of the bath. No,
Of the building and the wall, of the restrooms, police substation, and then the walls are kind of disappear into a berm, and they're all kind of like a rough sandstone. It's
gorgeous,
again, it's
but
beautiful. This is a first-rate, world-class project. But there is some, those concerns, and the police substation, I think they're wanting it to be a little more than what they initially thought it would be as just a touchdown. I think the police actually want to have a few officers placed there permanently. Their desk would be there. This would be their home. Which is great. It will give an element that, homeless people won't be bathing in the fountains or whatever. There'll be some supervision there. There's a lot of freestanding furniture that hopefully won't walk. So it's all good. I think it's just been a little bit of, this is a rolling boulder that keeps getting bigger and bigger, and I think the police department got in a little late in that action on the planning, and so now they're kind of speaking up.
they even had tables and chairs going throughout the park that were not bolted to the ground. But the comment from them was, it's heavy enough that it won't be moved. And a few people looked like, are you kidding me? People will pick up anything. So it was.
I want to speak to that. I was just in Boston, and they did this huge park, the Greenway, over their thing that was put in maybe 10 years ago. So it's quite well grown now. And I was shocked that they have 500 metal movable chairs that are put out and taken down every single day, because they want people to be able to just move them around and sit where they want to sit. And they're beautiful and they're lovely, and I thought, well, people might walk away with them, but they don't seem to think that's a problem. They don't have a lot of permanent seating because they don't really want homeless to sleep on it. But they just have these beautiful, they're just like a regular chair except they're metal, and people can just pick them up and move them wherever they want to sit, which is a lovely idea, but it does cost a lot of maintenance. But I guess the city of Boston thinks it's preferable to the permanent benches that had originally been planned in the park. And of course, their park is, almost a mile long, I think. It's very big. But anyway, so city parks are, what they are. And I'm sure everybody has a billion ideas of what it should be, and I'm sure that's kind of where they are now, but they always do go overrun. And I can see having police presence, but if it's a big police substation, it's not a big spot, so then it takes up a lot of park space too, so.
Commissioner Dixon?
Yes, I have a question, but first I'll say that Commissioner Gray and I bumped into each other in Boston at the Isabella Gardner Museum. It was great. Yes. My question is Mark Rios still one of the designers of the park? Because I know that in LA he has movable furniture and they haven't had problems with that.
Yes, they're completely involved in this, and they're the one design firm behind it, and they've had zero issue in Los Angeles. They're not concerned about the furniture. I'm not concerned about the furniture. I'm more concerned about the budget, and are we missing a revenue source in having it be a simpler, plainer, yes, it won't be as sexy of a park, but to open the door for Modernism Week, for Gay Pride, for Christmas, for a potential Fashion Week, whatever, to erect a large tent. Because right now, Modernism Week will be looking for a home again, and we end up shipping these festivals off to a random parking lot somewhere. And this proved this past year to be extremely beneficial for the museum and for downtown merchants.
Commissioner Hammond?
I love the idea of the park. I've looked at the plans for the park, and it's lovely. It looks like there's a lot going on. I was surprised that there was a water feature there, given the amount of conversation that's been going on up and down the valley the last few years after the water at the river and all the maintenance that place takes. It just seems like it would be something that this city would think 3 or 4 times about before putting it in. And Jim, I support your statement about doing something simpler.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that there could be a lot of benefits to that. I am from Portland originally, and we have the Pioneer Courthouse Square, which is all brick. And yet the amount of participation, the events that go on in that park are just amazing, and it's all brick. So I think there are alternatives, and I would say simple.
Yes, so thank you very much for that report, and please keep us informed, because if it continues to go over budget, I'm sure they'll be coming to us. Yes, Commissioner Williams.
I didn't quite understand. You seem to say that it was sort of a fait accompli, because we went through this whole design process, and I know people looked at this over and over again. But now you're suggesting changes. Is that just your voice, or you think there's some indication that they might change the design?
No, they will not change This is simply my voice.
Okay.
And just reading into a little bit of undertones in the last meeting that, there's been disappointment by different organizations that they will not be able to house their events in that park space.
Lawn space, that's what I want to look like. I remember.
The lawn space
That's
is
not big
very
enough.
small. I mean, it's great for a small concert, film festival event or things like that, but it's not huge. It will seat a few hundred people, but you're not going to be able to erect a giant tent for like a modernism week, the way it was positioned last year, or Gay Pride, which is going to do something, I guess, in November there. You know, again, I'm just, it's my wheels turning as I look at that and saying, wow, this is over budget. Maybe, you know, should we consider opening the park up a little bit more? And then, hey, there would be that benefit of at least then opening the door to some of these events.
Just one last question. Did you get any indication in your meeting of a timeline of when construction starts, finish? You mentioned February next year probably wouldn't be available.
Correct. Yeah, it looks like they want to really, they're trying to fast track the design process, and that's what I said, we're so far down the rabbit hole on this. They want to have our next meeting in July, and I will be out of town, and that could be like the final review. And then from there, it's off to get, you know, the bids and quotes and get everything together with the city and purchase orders. And I think they probably would like to break ground sometime around the holidays or shortly after.
And the build-out would be a year, 2 years? Have any idea?
It will probably take a year.
A year.
That's what Mark has said.
And they are ready to do the quote-unquote Maryland Plaza. But I don't even want to go there with that because that's such a convoluted, we don't know if she exists, if she's triplicated or what, or who's bought her or
Well, I
what.
can give you a little update on that, which is on the next part of our agenda, so that's a great segue.
But we also stated in the meeting that we asked the architects to take off of the drawings the word Maryland Plaza, because based on comments you'll make in that, we got them to say, change now on all your drawings from now on to be calling it the Art Plaza, because of the questionableness of whether or not this is moving.
All right, well, thank you, really appreciate it. Okay, the next thing that we have is the discussion of the unfunded capital improvement projects. The purpose of this was to get these on the agenda. This was brought up by Marcus Fuller in our April meeting, these 3 different items. And so it's something we're going to have to start thinking about. There really doesn't need to be a lot of discussion about it this evening, but starting in September when we start, these items will definitely be on our list. The Luminaire House has no budget for the foundation, so that is an issue that we will need to address. The library, it's very clear we need $5 million for our library in Palm Springs. And when the College of the Desert comes up, we're projecting out that possibly they'll come to Measure J for another $6 or $7 million for that library. So that's something that we know it's very difficult for us. It's impossible. We're not going to come up with $5 million in a year. And so we have to start thinking about how that would work. And if the library doesn't come to us, then we need to reach out to the library because they need to come up with a plan that's incremental. So it's like $2 million one year, $1.5 million the next year or whatever. And so those are things that are just coming down the pike, and that's why I want them on the agenda. The third thing is the Marilyn Monroe statue. We are in negotiations. I believe Aftab Dada, who is one of our old partners, is on the negotiation team. She's sitting in a warehouse in New Jersey right now in storage. And so the goal is to get Maryland, but they right now don't have the funds. And so I'm sure they're going to come to us for something there as well. So that's just an update on where we are with those particular 3 items. Are there any questions? Yes, Commissioner Gray?
So I have questions about all of them. A Luminaire House. Who owns the Luminaire House?
The city
The
owns.
city.
The city currently owns this
Yes.
building. Who's going to run a Luminaire House, the city or the museum?
I believe the museum.
I think there is a separate foundation for the Luminaire House, if I'm not mistaken. I've heard that in the park conversation.
So my question is, I know so somebody would need to come up with a plan here. If the city owns it, that's fine. If there's a foundation, which I thought there was too, that's fine too, but that's a public-private partnership. And I hear no funds have been supported for this project, but we don't even seem to really know what the project is, I guess.
Okay,
So-
Commissioner Gray, let me repeat what I said earlier, is this is to get these on the agenda.
Yeah,
This is not,
I understand that, but
and we won't have any more information until September.
if it's not, if it's a private entity, then I'm unclear as to why we would be even funding it. So
Okay.
that's a question I have. And as far as the library goes, that wasn't a big issue. And the Marilyn Monroe statue, when you said we or somebody's negotiating, who is exactly negotiating? Does anyone know who the who is?
I do not know all the members. The only member I know.
I
Do you
think it's
have an answer?
I think it's PS Resorts.
Okay, so PS Resorts is doing this, okay.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, because it, just individuals on behalf of whom and whatever, I thought it would be better if it was clear what, the city is definitely a city project, and the others seem to be public-private issues, so both of which are art projects, I guess. The Luminaire House is sort of an art project, and Marilyn Monroe is an art project. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. I know that there is some art downtown now that was put in by the developer as well as in conjunction with the gallery, I guess, and that we didn't have to do any funding for that. So I'm just curious about that. And so before they come, I would want to know those answers.
Okay, all right. Any other comments?
Just a quick question. Has anybody heard any estimate of the cost of Maryland? Nothing.
Less than
keeps
it was,
going up, so-
less than what it was before, is what I've heard. Yeah.
Odd question.
Those are my favorite.
Has there ever been any thought, because you could probably sit a nice big tent there, for the city to acquire it to be a part of the park wrapping around? Just a thought. It just seems like it might be something to think about.
I'm not clear what you're talking about.
Here's the parking structure, this area right here. Just a thought to mention that. They should look at.
I don't think it's as big as what they used for Modernism Week, but I've thought about that as well. If Grit would at least.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Might
if
be
Grit
something to start
Development would lease
negotiating
that
on.
land too, because they're not concerned about developing that right now. They're more concerned about getting the Virgin going. And same thing with the pit. That's why the babies are there. They're not gonna touch that for 2 years at least, so, they're taking baby steps, but they're being very measured, literally. But I think it's very measured growth, which is fine.
Yeah.
That would be an empty lot for a while, especially if that could bleed into the Maryland Art Plaza
Right.
for events.
Just a thought.
Thank you. All right, the next thing on the agenda is election of officers, which I will put out to the floor. As everyone knows, I'm stepping down as chair, and Vice Chairman Hammond is terming out. Even though she's staying until December, she won't be here for the full year. So we need to elect a new chair and a new vice chair this evening. And so I will put it out to the floor, but I'm going to use executive privilege and do the first nomination. And I would like to nominate Jim Gazan to replace me as chair for the Measure J Commission. And so I'm asking for, is there a second? Okay, a second. All right. Now I'd like, Commissioner, would you accept the nomination?
After thoughtful soul searching, I will accept.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, now I will put it out to the floor. Are there any other nominations for chair?
I move we accept that nomination by acclamation.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay. The seconds have it.
What did we just do?
We just voted.
I think I just got into a lot of trouble.
You did. Congratulations, by the
We
way.
closed nominations and voted with one.
Yeah.
Right, right.
I just said acclamation.
That's-
It was.
It was, but it was well done.
You're gonna have to teach me that one.
Okay.
Congratulations.
All right, well, anyway,
was very
congratulations very
restrained.
much so. Okay, and I will ask you to say a few words, but first I want to do the vice chair election. And so I will now ask for any nominations for vice chair.
I would like to nominate Sid Craig.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All right.
Would you,
Commissioner Craig, would you accept that as a nomination to be vice chair? Okay. Do we have any other nominations? Going once, twice, 3 times? The nomination is closed. To you, sir.
I move we accept Sid Craig as our vice chair by acclamation.
Those in say aye? Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Congratulations to both of you. Excellent. Yes,
The
okay.
pay- the pay
Chair
remains the
Gazan, would you
same.
like to say a few words?
The pay remains the same at 0.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You still have to make your own copies.
And you still have to fill out a Form 700 once a year.
Yes, yeah. So, would you
Well,
like to say anything?
I'm just glad that you're staying around for a few months so that you will be able to guide me, because obviously I'm very new. We're all new, but we hope to continue the legacy. We definitely respect all the time and pain that you've all been through over the last many years on this commission. And I understand that Mr. Keel, is something going on with you career-wise? So I'm really disappointed that I'm not going to be working with you and making you miserable.
I gave it my best shot, but
That bums me out, but we're happy for you. Hopefully it's a good move.
Did the word slip out?
Very
It
quietly.
has now, so tell us.
So, yeah, I have two things to announce. First of all, to Commissioner Kazan, I'm not going to be able to volunteer for the Palm Springs International Film Festival Short Fest because I'm getting on a plane to Italy tomorrow. So that's why I've totally just ignored your emails. I'm not dissing you, I just am not doing it. So this time. So I come back from Italy on July 3rd, and my last day with the city is going to be the 5th. And on Monday the 9th, I'll be the new Director of Finance for the Coachella Valley Water District.
excellent. Well, that
So
sounds great.
And behind me, Marla Pendleton is my Assistant Finance Director. She'll be acting interim Finance Director.
Oh,
And
nice to
she'll
meet you.
have, she'll have the pleasure and privilege of giving you these monthly financial reports.
To be a volunteer for the film festival in January.
He did.
So he's already been
Yeah.
asked.
Okay, excellent.
So,
Well, this is good. This means that I might have more tenure than the new person that comes along, so we can maybe intimidate.
Careful, yes.
You can train him.
Well, anyway, it's been a pleasure to work with you, and as disappointed as we all are that you're moving on, we're glad that
well,
you're still in the neighborhood.
it's a pleasure to have served with you for all these years. And I sent David Vogel a text saying I thought it's disappointing that he missed our last meeting, and I'm going to promise to take his cupcake.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
How
So,
many years with Palm Springs, Jeff?
Just over 10 years.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
great.
So,
Congratulations.
thank you.
I just want to say, having been chair for 2 years, and actually, we worked a lot through the first couple of years where we didn't know what we were doing.
None of us
You were
knew
awesome.
anything. Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
And best of luck, for sure.
Thank you.
Yes.
And can I just,
You may, Commissioner Hammond.
Michael Johnson actually will continue on the commission.
Through June of
Through June of
2019.
Yeah.
Is,
Yeah.
with Elena and I
We're
are.
counting on it.
Yeah, okay. So I'll be there for you through the, and who knows after that.
I'm counting the meetings.
Exactly. Okay, so, any public comments? No. Okay. Staff member comments
When are we eating the cupcakes?
in about 30 seconds. Commissioner member comments, of course, Commissioner Hammond.
Jim, John.
Oh,
I
John
just have
Reed.
a, I just
Oh,
have
I'm
a
sorry.
quick
Go ahead.
comment, and that is that while have agreed to serve through the end of the year, which I'm happy to do, if the council were to move more quickly and someone wants to come on the commission, I'm happy to step down before that time.
Okay, thank you for
I
that.
just wanted to
Yes.
say that, so you can pass that along to the powers that be.
All right, thank you. All right.
So I've enjoyed being on the commission, and although there are times that it's felt like a rodeo, but, you know, I think it's been very enjoyable. And I had an opportunity, as I mentioned last month, to go to Birmingham this past month to a National Neighborhoods Conference. And Tom Garcia went with me, as did Melissa Desmarais, now our captain. And I just wanted to say that from the comments that we got, that we received after our presentation from all over the country, that we have a pretty incredible city here. And our presentation was about collaboration between neighborhoods. This was a neighborhood conference after all, and city staff. And so the hotspots projects that this group has funded, $3 million that should be completed sometime. The sidewalks are the last project, and there's no date yet for completion, but I think we're looking for another grant, a different grant for this. So, and our new project, the worst of the worst traffic collision corridor, traffic, pedestrian, and bicycle corridor in the city is our new project that we funded a year ago. And based on that funding a year ago, the city has designed the project. The city has identified grant money for this project. And we are looking with a $2 million investment, 2 years community project investment that functions as matching funds for grants. We have turned that 2 million into 10 million. And we will, and as a result, we will have an amazing state-of-the-art project, engineering project, from on South Palm Canyon to the curve on East Palm Canyon, which is our major traffic accident corridor. So what that says to me, and the comments that we received from the public, from other neighborhoods, from other cities, is that this is pretty cool, and that not every city thinks like this, and not every city invests like this. And this is an investment, but spending $2 million for 10 seems like a pretty good return. And for future projects, as we're approving projects and thinking about making those decisions, it just seems like we need to also think about the potential grant funding that could come with them, and just to make Measure J money go that much further. So, I thank everybody for being part of listening to the community project funding suggestions, and for approving those those funds, and I think we've done well with them. And we've learned a lot as well. So, thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. Okay, so we're getting ready for cupcakes. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Oh, yes.
I have one question.
You may ask it.
I've served on 2 other commissions, and we were dark in May, and we're now scheduled to be dark in July and August.
That's correct.
And the other commissions I've served on were always dark in August. Is there a reason why we're 2 months in a row going into dark for the summer? Or
We
is
just,
this
I just
standard?
inherited it.
We weren't dark in May.
We weren't dark in May.
No.
We're only dark in July and August. May, they moved the meeting
I'm sorry, I
early.
didn't mean that.
Yeah, so we weren't dark. We decide in the fall on whether to be dark in December or not. It's not an automatic. July and August is an automatic, because it's hard to get a quorum with the summer heat, people leave, blah, 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 blah. And so that, as far as I know, is the rationale behind
I'm
it.
just asking if this was standard here, practice.
Yes, it is. July and August, always dark.
I think another reason it was followed is the fiscal budget for next year had just been approved. We'd just done our work, so it was really no
Good answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd also add that I believe without exception, commissions are dark in August.
Correct.
And many of them are dark in July also.
Okay.
And
Are you looking for more meetings?
No, I was just saying, no, I was curious.
The good news is you do have a park meeting in July, so
Yes.
yeah, you won't be bored.
Thank you very much.
So, and the other thing, the December meeting being the third, that we meet the third Thursday of the month, the December meeting is right before Christmas. So
No,
we're,
it's all
this year, the 20th is the Thursday before the holiday weekend. And it's like, who wants to be here?
I hear you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, can I say one more thing?
You may, yes.
I just neglected to thank my assistant, Ariana Muniz. Just the incredible amount of work that she puts in for this commission and all of her other duties. And none of this would come together without her great work. And I want to thank her for all of that, just not for this commission, but all of it. I appreciate that. And
Well, we all appreciate it.
Here, here.
Yeah, thank you.
You're not leaving too, are you?
No. Oh, actually, I guess I don't care. It's your problem. No.
Why are you doing that on Saturday?
Yeah,
All
you're
right.
one of the selling points for
Okay,
these.
now, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Cupcakes.
Yay.